we're going to begin the first session, which is called pre-pollution, preparation. And we're going to hear from the Directorate of Water and Biodiversity. In fact, they have worked with us to construct this first session and to organize it. The main orientations of the ministry and the Charter for Water and the Environment will be covered. We will have the Sub-Directorate of Maritime Affairs. There we are. And then we'll hear from the DGPR, which is the General Directorate for Risk Prevention, with the impact of chemical pollution, industrial activities and chemical pollution, for example. And then we'll hear from the Regional Directorate for the Environment from Southern France. And this will cover a range of activities that go all the way to inspecting installations. So there will be 45 to 50 minutes now devoted to this session. And I'll leave it up to you to hand over, the four of you. There you are.
So thank you very much, Nicolas, and thank you to Cedre for organizing this day. I have the pleasure of introducing this session on the importance of preparedness. So together with the other state services represented here today, I'm going to be presenting the different work that we carry out. So I am Clémence Corbeau. I am a marine pollution officer, and I'm going to be presenting the work conducted at the Water and Biodiversity Directorate, presenting our role in marine pollution. So first of all, we are in charge of managing POLMAR emergency funding. This is a funding system that provides funding in the event of accidental marine pollution to fund response operations, but also we work on preparedness issues. We provide a subsidy to Cedre. We also we cover possible costs induced by the production or revision of sensitivity atlases for the shoreline, and we also structure an environmental expertise network. We are involved in the state debt recovery claims, and we also work on the national monitoring and ecological impact assessment strategy, both pre and post-crisis. So for that, we work hand in hand with other stakeholders, including Cedre, so a whole range of crisis management stakeholders. So as we all know, it's very important to prepare for response. It's important to have efficient procedures in place, consulting all the different stakeholders. We know that the coastline hosts a whole range of different activities, and there are both residential areas and a rich variety of different species. So there are threefold issues to be taken into consideration: economic, social, and environmental aspects. Response preparedness is conducted outside of a crisis. So we are constantly monitoring marine pollution services and in order to ensure an efficient response in the event of an incident. It's important to have the right resources in the right place at the right time. I've given you a few examples that were also mentioned by Nicolas in his introduction. The Torrey Canyon in 1967 off the coast of Great Britain. 121,000 tons of crude oil and bunker fuel were spilt. Around 4,000 tons of waste was recovered on the French coast, and 25,000 dead birds. The second example you can see here is the Erika in 1999. 19,000 tons of heavy fuel oil were spilt. More than 5,000 professionals and volunteers were involved in shoreline response operations. The Erika led to a very heavy impact. A total of 77,000 birds were collected, but the actual number was in fact definitely much higher, an estimated 300 to 500,000 birds. There was also heavy shellfish contamination. Up to some shellfish farms were affected up to 2 years following the incident. Salt production was also affected, as well as maritime marshlands and onshore vegetation, with impacts during between 1 and 3 years. In 2012, the Supreme Court confirmed both the criminal and civil liability of the parties involved in the shipping. So 13 million euros were paid out in compensation for environmental damage. There were many parties claiming civil damages, in particular local associations. So what were the consequences in terms of legislation? In France, the law of the 8th of August 2016 on the recovery of biodiversity, nature and landscapes was established. So it established a regime for the repair of environmental damage based on the polluter pays principle. This law is based on the principle that the environment must be under constant improvement. It also establishes the principle of compensation and the principle of ecological solidarity. The polluter is the first party responsible. The polluter pays principle applies in France. You can see some articles of law on the screen here. First of all, indicating that any act of man which causes damage to another shall oblige the person by whose fault it occurred to repair it. So what's important to remember is that there is an obligation for the polluter to repair the damage caused. So environmental damage is based on the polluter pays principle. So this affects impacts on the ecosystem, the collective benefits that humans derive from the environment. So the impacts need to be assessed on a case-by-case basis from the beginning of the incident, and the principle is the same as that of civil liability, in that ecological damage is always repairable, and this repair is mandatory. So to repair ecological damage, that goes hand in hand with environmental monitoring. Now, there is some confusion between health monitoring and monitoring of ecological impact. Sometimes ecological impact is only monitored to assess ecological damage for legal purposes. So there are three aspects of environmental monitoring. There is assessment and monitoring of ecological impact. There's health monitoring, and there's information gathering in order to provide evidence for subsequent claims. So the diagram you can see on this slide shows you these three different aspects, which have different objectives and also different resources. So here at the Water and Biodiversity Directorate, we focus on these three aspects. So as in conclusion, there are economic, social and environmental issues which explain the importance of the resources and the large number of resources provided by the state for response preparedness. Case law has reinforced the concept of ecological damage and its compensation. And the principle of the polluter pays principle is underpins the concept of ecological damage. We won't be going into the detail of these methods. There are different methods to assess ecological damage, each with their own advantages and drawbacks. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, I'm available. And now I'm going to pass over to Océane Rignot.